tu ya mambo ambayo wameweza kuangazia ni kuhusiana na hiyo fomu ya 34A ambayo inadaiwa kuwa watu waliweza kuingia kwenye mfumo huo wa kimskit wa Tume Huru ya Uchaguzi na Mipaka IEBC, wakaweza kubadilisha matokeo na hapo baadaye wakaweza tena kuirudisha kwenye mfumo huo. Vile vile baadhi ya madai hayo vile vile anasema kuwa baada ya fomu hiyo ya 34A kuweza kutolewa ni kuwa matokeo hayo yaliweza kutolewa kutoka kwa mgombea mmoja ambaye ni huyo wa Azimio akaweza kuwekwa kwa yule mwingine. Hivyo basi hao mawakili wameweza kusema kuwa wakiweza kuangazia yale yaliyowasilishwa na mawakili wa Tume Huru ya Uchaguzi na Mipaka IEBC ni kwa hilo halingewezekana kulingana na jinsi mfumo huo ulivyotengenezwa, na vile vile wakaweza kuitaka mahakama kuweza kuwaambia hawa waliowasilisha rufaa kuweza kuelezea mahakama jinsi kazi hiyo ilivyofanya ama kubadilishwa huo kwa fomu hizo kulivyofanyika na ni wakati upi ambapo kubadilishwa huko kuliweza kufanyika. Vile vile waliweza kusema kuwa iwapo basi mahakama hii ya juu itaweza kuzingatia hayo masuala ambayo yaliweza kuwasilishwa kwenye rufaa hiyo, basi itaweza kuiweka katiba katika njia ambayo sasa katiba haielewi jinsi ya kuendelea baada ya hapo. Manake katiba sasa haina vipengele vinavyoelezea nini kinahitajika kufanyika iwapo jambo kama hili linaweza kutokea. Hivyo basi wameweza kuiomba mahakama ya juu ambayo ina jopo la majaji 7 waweze kutupilia mbali rufaa hiyo iliyoombwa na Raila Odinga pamoja na mgombea mwenza Martha Karua pamoja na wale wengine watu takriban sita ambao vile vile walikuwa wamewasilisha rufaa yao. Vile vile tuliweza kumuona hayo maombi ama hayo mawasilisho nilotaja yaliweza kufanywa na wakili Fred Ngatia, na hapo baadaye basi tukaweza kumuona wakili Katwa Kigen vile vile aliweza vile vile kuweza kutoa mawasilisho yake kuhusiana na rufaa hiyo akimtetea tu naibu wa rais William Ruto ambaye alikuwa ametangaza kuwa alikuwa ameshinda tarehe 15 mwezi wa 8 kuhusiana na uchaguzi uliokamilika, ambapo Katwa Kigen aliweza kusema kuwa uchaguzi uliofanya huko wa kielektroniki, kilichokuwa cha kielektroniki ni njia iliyotumika kuweza kuleta hizo fomu kutoka kwenye maeneo tofauti ya nchi hadi katika sehemu ambapo yalikuwa yanatangazwa. Vile vile akaweza kusema kuwa akaweza kuitaka mahakama hiyo kuweza kutupilia mbali rufaa hiyo, akisema kuwa lile jambo ambalo linafaa kuangaziwa haswa ni hizo fomu za 34A na bali sio mambo mengine ambayo yameweza kuwasilishwa katika mahakama ya juu. Vile vile tuliweza kumwona wakili Mudhomi Thiankolo ambaye vile vile anamwasilisha naibu rais William Ruto, ambapo aliweza kusema kuwa yeye kulingana na anavyoiona hii rufaa basi haoni kesi yoyote hapa, haoni mawasilisho yoyote ambayo yanawezesha kesi hii kuweza kuamuliwa vizuri. Akiweza kusema kuwa mengi ambayo ameweza kuyaona tu ni mambo ya kuchekesha, ni mambo ambayo ameweza kuyalinganisha na riwaya kadha wa kadha, mojawapo ikiwa igizo la Macbeth, ambapo ameweza kusema kuwa ni sawa na mizizimo na vile vile kelele nyingi tu ambazo ziliweza kufanywa hapo mahakamani. Vile vile akaweza kuilinganisha na riwaya ya Shaban Robert kuhusiana inayoitwa Kusadikika, akiambia mahakama kuwa waweze kuangazia kuwa hii si mahakama ya nchi ama eneo la kusadikika kama Shaban Robert anavyosema katika riwaya yake, akisema kuwa basi iweze kutupiliwa mbali, kwani akiangazia mawasilisho kutokana na hati ya kiapo iliyowasilishwa na Mark John Githongo ni kuwa mawasilisho hayo yote yameweza kupatikana kuwa hayakuwa ya kweli, kwani hati hizo zinaangazia ama mambo ambayo yapo katika hati hizo za kiapo ama affidavit ni za mwaka 2017 na zimepatikana na makosa mengi sana. Hivyo basi akaitaka mahakama kuweza kutupilia mbali. Vile vile kulikuwa na wengine kama Melissa Ngani ambaye vile vile aliweza kuongelea mambo hayo, Kithure Kindiki, na kwa sasa anaeleza kuwa kikao hicho kinarejea ambapo wanaenda kuangazia mawasilisho hayo na vile vile shughuli ya kutathmini vifaa vilivyotumika katika uchaguzi. Kwa hivyo unaenda kukurejesha studioni tuweze kufuatilia kikao hicho.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I will invite the Honorable Justice Ouko to begin with these questions.
Thank you, Judge President. I have a couple of questions. I'll start with Mr. Mahat, who, without leave, proceeded to convert this courtroom into a classroom. Mr. Mahat, there was an allegation that 33,000 vote differential were noted between the votes cast for the president and those for governor, senator, women rep. You tried this morning to explain that some of those instances arose from stray ballots. Would you tell us how many constitute stray ballots? And can you also share with us how those stray ballots are distributed in terms of counties? Related to that, did you have, in your analysis, did you have any instances where voters walked into the polling station, voted for the president and no other candidate or no other category of candidates, what in this court we call the Mwilu question, in reference to my lady the vice president, I think arising from the 2017 question that I think my lady and my lord Mr. Justice Smokin Wanjala posed. Did you have any of those where you are issued with 5-6 ballot papers, but you don't utilize all of them? Senior Counsel Kamau Karori, the appointment of the chairperson of the IEBC was gazetted by the chairman himself. I would like to know whether he was gazetted as an agent of the commission or he was gazetted as national returning officer in his capacity as the chairman of the commission, and whether, if it was as an agent of the commission, whether there were any resolutions preceding this appointment. I'm back to Mr. Mahat with the question of voter turnout. According to your presentation on PowerPoint this afternoon, you said there were 45,994 voters who were identified through Kim's kit, and this is out of 46,229. Sorry, that Kim's kit were used in 45,994 polling stations out of 46,229. That gives us 235 polling stations, which I assume I did not use Kim's kit. Therefore, assuming that the manual system was employed to identify them, are you able to say the numbers from these 235 polling stations? I saw some figures like 860 or 86,000, 114,000. So if you can just clarify that for us. And again to Mr. Mahat, because he dealt with figures. Mr. Umtata yesterday presented also a PowerPoint to demonstrate that 1.6 million votes were cast or were streaming in many hours after the closure of voting. If you can also respond to that question. Mr. Gumbo, both Mr. Issa and Mr. George Oraro Senior Counsel, in their submissions, talked about how Kenyans were following the streaming of results live. And then something happened and that stopped. Can you explain to us what may have happened for this to have stopped? My lady, those are all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Council. Again, your submissions were most helpful. We thank you. Professor Muigai, you said that the whole dispute revolves around numbers. And you were before us in 2017, and the question of Section 83 of the Elections Act was prominent at the time. Morgan versus Simpson was prominent. You were Attorney General at the time. A number of things happened around Section 83 post our judgment. My question is, looking at the qualitative, the quantitative test, and Professor Kindiki raised the question too around Section 83. I had it before he raised it. Could you speak to it? And what is the approach you should take in this case regarding the test to apply? Number two, again, to your team, and any of you could answer it. It's not a flippant question. I'm raising it deliberately because I have reason to. I know that the events of 15th August are in our minds, but remember that there was an extra day by which Mr. Chebukati could have declared the result. Why did he not wait until that day? Violence or no violence? Perhaps you have another reason. Reach out to the commissioners, the four that are now named the four. Try and reach a consensus. Address the question of the 27 constituencies so that these suspicions that have now cropped up would not have been an issue. Is there any other reason why he did not take advantage of the extra day to do what he had to do? Mr. Oraro, I understand where you're coming from. I understand where your clients are coming from. I understand where Mr. Kenyo and Mr. Kihara and the rest are coming from. We are now in a sport where public office is becoming exceedingly dangerous. Falsehoods are being peddled, not just to those on this side, but more even on this side and those outside. So I understand the need for you to say, my clients would like to clear their names because they've been mentioned in these proceedings. But let us come back to the proceedings, the pain of social media, the pain of affidavits aside. What do you want this court to do with the information you've given us? So we have had your side of the story. We've had Mr. Chebukati's side. We've had Cherera's side and our colleagues. What do you tell the court to do in the context of this judgment, in the context of the issues for determination? What do we do with the matters you placed before us? And while you're at it, you also mentioned Section 83. Perhaps you could also say something about Regulation 87.3. Perhaps since you appear for the Attorney General, and for the first time you're not appearing as amicus but as a respondent, could you say something about Regulation 87.3 and the question I posed to Mr. Noroji? It would be helpful for us if we could hear you on that question. I believe those are my... Mr. Mahat, I may have missed this, but I still want to clear my... This is a question I posed to Mr. Murgora as well. So the format initially is JPEG. At what point exactly does it convert to PDF? Forget the CSV story. I guess Mr. Murgora dropped that. But I just want to understand for myself. At what point you've taken the image, you've asked all the questions, very good questions you've asked, the system has asked you the question. At what point does it convert to PDF? I thank you all very much. Thank you, Judge President.
Thank you, Judge President. My questions will go to Professor Muigai, as we've been asked by a number of parties that they've asked us to settle the law around Article 138.3 and 10. In your submissions, you suggested that the term commission can be used in multiple senses. How do we know which sense will be applied when? As a former Attorney General, perhaps you can point out to us whether it is in regulations, it is in the law, but how do we know which sense is applied when? My second question goes to the history of independent commissions, and Professor Muigai, you sat on the CKRC together with my colleague, Justice Lenaula, and you do know that the drafters of the Constitution introduced independent commissions and independent offices to deal with issues of authoritarianism, accountability, transparency, and to do away with the issue of one person having power. But from the narrative that we're hearing here in the court, there appears to be an all-powerful chair who, so what is the check for this all-powerful chair if the commissioners have nothing to do with his role? What would happen if the chair was to announce the wrong results completely? Or if he was mentally incapacitated or sick, or worst case scenario, dead? Who then would announce the results? What is the role of the other commissioners? I think this is bothering me, especially because it seems to me that your client and the IEBC suggest that the chairperson works with the CEO, and I feel a bit concerned. The CEO is not vetted by Parliament. He is appointed, but he seems to wield immense powers over and above the other commissioners. I cannot imagine that that could have been the intention of the drafters of the Constitution. So what role do these commissioners actually do? Because it hasn't come clearly. Or, for example, if one commissioner says he's in charge of ICT, what does that mean? Does it mean he's in charge of ICT until the presidential election, then he's not? What does it mean? What is the role of these commissioners? And I'm asking this question more towards trying to understand the leadership and the management in the commission as opposed to the management of the presidential election. Because I think they're two separate issues, and I'm trying to figure out whether this is a Chebukati problem. Is it a leadership problem? Is it a commissioner's problem? What's this problem we're seeing? I'm trying to understand that, and I'd like to hear that from you. Thank you. One more question, sorry. When the results come for other elections, so you have returning officers for senator, for governor, for MCA, and they are all announced or declared locally at the polling station constituency county, how is that information transmitted to the public? And when that information is transmitted to the public through a gazette notice, are the commissioners involved? Or is it the CEO only? Or is it the chairperson only? Who is involved in the declaration or the transmission of declaration publicly of those results? Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Justice. My first question, I think, could be addressed by Mr. Karori. In the morning, you did really argue quite strongly that when it comes to verification, tallying, and declaration of the result, the presidential election result, that really, if you look at the law in your interpretation of the Article 138 and the jurisprudence that you say emanates from this court, you seem to be arguing that that is strictly within the purview of the chair's mandate, and that really these other commissioners let's say the remaining, the 6 commissioners, really ought not to be around that, because that's a role preserved for the chair. But then you said, according to the statute that establishes this commission, the enabling statute, the roles and functions of the commission, commission, are stated. One of them is oversight. What is oversight? If, in fact, the commissioners, I would have thought that one of the most important oversight roles in the commissioner's life would be when they are overseeing the verification and tallying of the presidential election result at the center before the same is then declared on behalf and but for the people of Kenya by the chair. So what is oversight? I ask this because we were informed yesterday, and I think you were here, that instead of perhaps playing this role, some of them were allocated welfare scenarios, protocol, and media. But what is oversight? What would they be oversighting over? That's the question. In other words, at what point in this corporate entity scenario does the chair then disengage from the other commissioners? Be they 2 or be they 5 or 6? When do you say this is chair qua chair and this is chair as part of the commission? Because we need to understand that. We've been asked to provide clarity. Then let's go to Mahat. Mahat, there is this story about this Venezuelan. And one of the issues is whether the technology system employed or deployed was penetrated. And you did tell us, again, quite robustly, that there was no such penetration or infiltration or intrusion, whichever. But you did also concede that this Venezuelan, whatever his name is, had access to the server. But your answer was that the contract between the IEBC and Smartmatic was to supply and maintenance. So if I understood you correctly, this Venezuelan was accessing the server as part of the maintenance. So what is this maintenance? What does it entail? What was he doing there? Say he was released and locked out just before the election. So what was he maintaining in that system? Maybe you just want to tell us what maintenance entails as part of that contract agreement. Then back to the question of percentages again, in terms of the turnout. I think I asked this question, I asked Mr. Orengo, but now that you may not have another, you may also want to address it. In the arguments that have been presented before us, Mr. Chebukati, the chair, first mentioned a 65.4% turnout. And then he did indicate that that was bound to change as results kept streaming in, especially if you took into consideration the number of those who had voted manually and the numbers that had yet to come in from the elders. Now, it is the petitioner's argument that if there was to be any change at all, then that percentage would have to increase rather than decrease. So I don't know. And how relevant, again, is this turnout to the determination of whether a candidate gathered 50% plus 1 vote? And then, you see, we have been asked by Mr. Ngatia, who do you believe among these two protagonists. This question has been put to us, and believe you me, we will have to deal with it. Who do we believe? Now, the question of the National Security Advisory Council. This, I think, Mr. Oraro, this could be of interest to you. On the one hand, you are telling us that these personnel visited the premises at the Bomas to express their concern, because, of course, being an advisory council, they must have arrived at a conclusion that unless results were released, then there was bound to be chaos. But on the other hand, the chair, in his affidavit, tells the court that the only reason the AG, or I mean not the AG, but the individuals, distinguished people for whom we have a lot of respect, paid that visit, was to tell the chair to somehow re-engineer the results in favor of one of the candidates. Now, this is not a question to you, but a question to Mr. Chebukati's counsel. Professor, you may want to or even Mr. Karori, are we to assume that by the time Mr. Kinyo placed this call, if the intention was to influence the declaration of the results, to change it, to re-engineer it, are we to assume that by the time that call was placed and by the time these gentlemen paid this visit, they already knew the results? Because there's no way they would have been on that mission if they had not known the results. So are we to assume that if this be their mission, are we to assume that they already knew the results? Okay. Then finally, Mr. Kilokumi, you know, you cited King Solomon. And this court treats Holy Scriptures very seriously. You came up with, you say there is victory. Because in King Solomon's story, the protagonists were distinguished mothers. But here, you called them two gentlemen. But I also remember that one of the mothers who turned out, or the mother claimants, who according to Solomonic wisdom could not have been the mother, is the one who was saying, cut the baby. But the other one, I remember, said, no, let her take the baby. Because what she was interested in is to preserve the baby. Would you be willing to advise? I rest my case.
Okay. Thank you, Honorable CJ and President of the Court. I just have one inquiry, one question for the respondents, and it may go to, actually it may be answered by either the counsel, Senior Counsel Gidu Migai and his team for the first and second respondents, or it could also be taken up at the same time by counsel for the ninth respondent. That is the team of the team of Senior Counsel Fred Ngatia. It's my understanding that one of the submissions and cases in response by the first and second respondents, on the one hand, and the ninth respondent, that is the President-elect, are placing the blame on the events of the ninth at the Tallying Center, Bomas of Kenya. That the two groups of parties are placing the blame on the first and second petitioners' agents and sympathizers and supporters during the tallying and verification. Of course, we have images. Many of us were not there. At least the bench was not there. But we have images which we saw on TV. We cannot say anything about what exactly happened, but we just know there was commotion, and people are throwing chairs and even perhaps attempts to harm each other. But we cannot say anything about it ourselves as a bench. Neither were those matters before us in these proceedings. No evidence or allegations, affidavits. We have seen the affidavits, seen the submissions, but no actually determination or delving into any evidence. So, and yet there is a request, a suggestion that we should attribute and apportion blame among we should place the blame on some parties, particularly the petitioners, because of their agents, supporters, and therefore actually you expect, particularly I can see the submissions of the 9th respondents, and even I saw the affidavit of Professor Goulier, where he actually says he expects action to be taken to investigate those criminal election offences. So I just wanted to inquire that would you expect, having had such elaborate submissions and affidavits, would you still expect us to make a determination, apportion blame, attribute blame, yet really the matter is not before us? Neither are we witnesses, neither were we at the bombers, neither were these matters had on merit before us. That's the question I would like you to think about and reflect. And when you come back, you will tell us whether you expect any release from us on that aspect. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge President. My clarifications will be sought from the team led by Professor Gidu Muigai, Senior Counsel. The first clarification I seek is as follows. As regards the requirements of Article 140, and just remaining within Article 140, and even considering that the 4 new commissioners only arrived in, was it September last year? And whatever it is they've been doing on a day-to-day basis, please clarify in my mind, because it's a major issue here, what the constitutional role of the 6 commissioners is under Article 140. And once you tell us what it is, just position their role against that of the staff of the Secretariat and of the chair. To the same team, and that is as per Article 138 3C. To the same team, of course, numbers are critical. They are, for me, they are. Because that is a mandate of 138 for A and B, the threshold, the 50% plus 1. And numbers are important for as long as they are not negated by any other process. And numbers would point to a good election, a good result, if they are not affected by anything else. And if Article 138 for A and B are not enough, deriving from them, this court in 2017 told us that although numbers were very, very important, other things could affect the numbers. Now, here is my concern. With the fact of the numbers being undisputed, they're important, kindly comment on whether or not, this question flows from the first one, the walking away of the 4 commissioners to go and hold, was it an IEBC meeting at Serena? Or was the IEBC meeting at Bomas? But please comment on the walking away of the 4 commissioners almost at the same time as the chair was about to declare the results. And in fact, I recall, because I was glued on TV myself, among their first words were that we have done an excellent job as concerns this election. But the results that the chairman is about to release are his results. So please comment for my benefit that working out, and how was it timed? You've got to know, because these are your clients, that they would be walking out of Bomas to Serena to allow all media houses, in fact, except for the violence that occurred at Bomas, the split screens of media houses would have been showing each one of them addressing us, the Kenyan voter, at the same time. In fact, at one moment there, I thought the team at Serena would give us their numbers, and the team at Bomas was going to give us their own numbers. So my concern is, does their walking out mean anything under Article 140? If it does, what is it? If it doesn't, why not? Still on numbers, and answering all of us, yours and our issue number 4 and 5, we were told, and I need clarity on this one because it cuts across 2 main issues, that the voter turnout was affected by the postponed election. Now, this is my concern. On the 9th, we were voting for 6 people, 6 officers. And we actually voted for 6 officers, including in the places where elections were postponed. And we were told that turnout was affected by the postponement. And since you are the central player in this thing, you could pass this to Mahat or anybody else in your team. Did the postponement affect only the vote of the president? And since we are in the habit of taking judicial notice, and since I am in a position to take judicial notice of the fact that elections have since happened in the postponed areas, have the subsequent elections returned a different result as to turnout? Because that happened, was it Monday? And we have yet to write a judgment. If they are affected, in what respect? Mr. Mahat, you told us that there is a holy place. You called it a sanctified place for the agents. And that it is the responsibility of parties to have agents. Your sister, while submitting, Ngania, told us that in 2017, we also emphasized the position of the agent. This is my question flowing from that. And it goes to the process of the election. What if there were no agents? The Article 81, I think 81E, places the burden of ensuring that we have a fair, free, transparent, accountable, and all those things, election, where, for whatever reason, agents are not present at an election. Is it not the role of the IEBC to ensure that Article 81E is upheld? And in the event, I know you said in Tiati, some constituency there, in fact, there were no agents from anyone. The process, and where there are no agents, the process. Finally, we have seen somebody named the 4 commissioners as respondents. One of these petitions, or some of them, named them as respondents. I think someone had even named them as interested parties or something like that during interlocutories. But by whatever name called, they remain commissioners. We have seen affidavits that they have sworn, which tend to show that they take certain positions. Now, what is the position to be taken by a commissioner? Is it a position of the party, any party, or is it the neutral position of the IEBC? And when they take, as I think they have done in this case, the position of any side, what is the court to do? Did I say finally? Then I'll say the second finally. That Kenywa's call, Mr. Joseph Kenywa's call, and whatever else that happened, the night meetings, the security issues, and so on and so forth. The name of this commission starts with the letter I, which says, I stands for the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. And in the body of 88 going down is that and even in their act, they shall not be directed in the manner in which they do their work. But I want you to clarify in my mind, because it's now an issue here, when it comes to writing the judgment, what do you want me to write? There are commissioners, and we talked about the dysfunctionality. It came from you, it didn't come from this side of the bench. Of the commission, I'm glad today I have had an attempt at answering my question yesterday as to when it became dysfunctional, but I'm still waiting for answers from the person to whom the question was directed, which is the petitioners. But tell me what the IEBC was supposed to do. On the one hand, they are being told, hurry up and announce. On the other hand, the court, as represented by the Honorable Mr. Justice Isaac Lenaola, is saying, but there is still time. There is yet another day before you can announce what is the IEBC to do. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, President.
Thank you, colleagues, for those questions. I think they were quite comprehensive. The team led by Professor Geth Muigai, you can see what we want to understand is this disconnect arising from IEBC. Because when we look at Article 88, the role of IEBC is to supervise and conduct elections. I do not want to repeat this question. Why the chairman deemed it fit to allocate commissioners, I think what has been described as domestic chores, leaving the core business of IEBC to the CEO to supervise. We've been told that they did a good job in the polling stations. Polling went on well, counting, tallying, and transmission until the National Tallying Center, where they are all there, but they are not doing the core business of, according to the Constitution, they have been given other duties. This is bringing a lot of questions in our minds. Then when we look at Article 138, 3C, we see they have a law, at least to look at the tallying results and ask questions whether the president-elect met the constitutional threshold. Before the chairman can go and announce the results, because we all understand nobody can tinker with the forms 34A's and B the way they have come. And you have heard IEBC being likened to the Supreme Court, much to the chagrin of the judges here, because the question which was being asked, I think, by Mr. Otieno is that if 7 people are sitting on a judgment or a decision and there is a dissenting voice, why didn't the chairman tell Kenyans exactly what happened? That we conducted this election, we came to the National Tallying Center, we have these results, but some of the colleagues have a dissenting voice. They will tell Kenyans why they are dissenting. Another thing that worries us, and I think your team should answer, is why the live streaming of the results stopped. Because if Kenyans were able to follow the streaming from the beginning to the end, which was being done in the spirit of accountability and stability and transparency, then the rhyme which you were being told of the pige ponki would not arise, because there would have been no confusion. We know this is how things are happening, and therefore maybe the losing candidate who is being called to go to the National Tallying Center can decide not to go, because they know already the results they are on the screen. So I would also like a clarification. The question has been asked, and it was demonstrated very ably by Mr. Mahat. I would really like to follow his presentation, because he did it with the passion. Mr. Kirago Kemani also did it, but I think I want you, Mr. Mahat, to, just demonstrate how the forms 34A that were attached to the affidavits of the respondents were photoshopped. I think I liked your language of photoshopping, and I could follow it, but I want to understand exactly how they were photoshopped. I think that is what I would like to ask. Thank you. Oh, one more.
Thank you, CJ. Sorry, I don't know whether it has been, but time without number, the issue of the 27 constituencies whose results, it is said, had not been included in the final tally before the announcement was made, keeps coming up. We have been told that in fact, these 27 constituency results have been verified and tallied. But because of the commotion, somehow they would not be part of the announcement. But why did the chair, just before, when calm was restored, why would he not have included them? Because they had already been verified and tallied. Or did not include in the final, so that they shouldn't be here bothering us? Why was it, where was the hurry this time? And already the results had been tallied and verified. Thank you, CJ.
Sorry, I just forgot a quick question, Professor Muigai, regarding my questions on Article 138. What is the implication of what you are suggesting on the chairpersons of other commissions? And I say chairperson, I noticed today everyone's talking about chairman. The correct term is chairperson.
Senior Counsel, I think myself that, and if I'm wrong, please correct me, that the most important day for a commissioner of the IEBC has got to be that time that they are doing the presidential election, and I think there is a reason why their term is 6 years, because our elections are every 5 years. So that, I think it's likely that in the 6 years, or whatever time one gets in, a commissioner would have to conduct an election, a general election. Let's not just say presidential, but a general election. Therefore, what is the role of the commissioner, the 7 commissioners? Back to my question number 1, and strictly under Article 140 for me, and 138 3C. Thank you.
My lady, my lords, we thank you for those very incisive questions. My team has requested me to very humbly request you to give us time, because you place much weight on those issues, we would equally want to come back not with off-the-cuff remarks, but with well-thought-out responses that can help you appreciate the issues you've raised. And I think that would put us in parity with our colleagues, because you raised questions with them yesterday. They've had 24 hours. I think they are still mulling over them. In their case, I think there were more difficult questions. If you would very kindly allow us to respond tomorrow morning, we assure you we will not take more than the time you will allocate us. And this is particularly for Mr. Mahat, our numbers expert, because he would like again to have something to demonstrate to the court on the screen. Thank you.
Yes, we are consulting because we did not want to give you a second bite of the cherry. You know you have no right to reply as respondents. But we have asked these questions on the tailhead. The hour is also late, but you know we are operating under very, very strict timelines because of the extraordinary circumstances of this matter. We have agreed to allow you to respond in the morning, considering that if you put your minds together, you'll be faster in the response than if we do it now. So we will give you 15 minutes tomorrow morning to respond, first thing tomorrow morning, to respond to those questions.
Milady, we don't want to sound ungrateful. We welcome the change you have made and thank the court, but we would request 30 minutes. And we will try our best, although you've asked these questions of many of us, we will try to have, at the very most, 2 people speak to it. 1 person to the law and 1 person to the numbers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yes. Yes. Thank you very much. I think that brings us to the end of today's proceedings. We will share in the course of this evening the report from the discovery or the scrutiny that went on. And then the order of business tomorrow, we will start with the team of Professor Githu Muigai responding to those questions. And then we will hear the rebuttal by the petitioners. And thereafter, we will give the parties who are participating in the scrutiny. That is the first petitioner, I think youth advocacy, CARIF, then IEBC, and the first respondent to comment on the report on scrutiny. We'll give each 15 minutes because we are trying to see how we can bring these proceedings to an end, at least by midday tomorrow, so that for us we can retreat to our chambers to work, to do the biggest job that has fallen on our hands, to come up with a judgment by Monday. So we will continue to ask you to bear with us and be very kind to us. Thank you very much. Have a very nice evening.